Welcome to Down the Street Eats Team Member Orientation. My name is Tim Hubbard. I'm the founder and CEO of Down the Street Eats, the restaurant group that operates Rudy's Deli Winter Park, Rudy's Deli Englewood, Vertical Bistro and Tap, and Brickhouse 40. Today we're going to be talking about our history, where we are today, and where we want to be 10 years from today. We're also going to be talking about core values, operating system called Traction, or EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. We'll have a financial discussion, guest and restaurant awareness, managing guest expectations, our one rule, rewriting the last chapter, our culture, your role, benefits, and future opportunities at Down the Street Eats. Our history. I bought Rudy's Deli in 2005. Rudy's Deli is located in downtown Winter Park, and at the time it had been in that location for 15 years. Rudy's was known for great food, great service, fresh ingredients, and a creative sandwich menu. After working at Rudy's as the manager for 5 years, I decided I wanted a second location. Part of the desire to open a second location was that I no longer wanted to work in the day-to-day operations of the deli and wanted to focus more on business. We opened Rudy's Deli in 2011 in the Meridian Tech Center. I worked at Rudy's Englewood for 2 years as the restaurant manager before we could get it on its feet and it was making a good income. At that time, I was elevated to a business owner, and that's right where I wanted to be. I worked from home, I managed the managers at each location, and really enjoyed being out of the day-to-day operations. After a couple years of successfully operating both restaurants, we got an opportunity at the base village of Winter Park Resort to open Vertical Bistro. That was in 2015. Vertical was my first venture as an owner into full-service restaurants. Vertical quickly became a very popular destination for skiers and riders at the Winter Park Resort. Something happened after we opened Vertical, though. While I had spent about 6 months getting that restaurant up and going and operating, we started seeing the numbers fall off at Rudy's Delis. Labor was going up, sales were going down, and food costs and expenses were going up because I didn't have my eye on the ball. At that time, I decided I need to find a way to run our businesses so that if I get pulled away to a project to open another restaurant or something else, our restaurants will run just as well, whether I'm watching or not. Enter Traction, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System. EOS, or Traction, is a book written by Gino Wickman. Traction is simply an operating system that we run here at Down the Street Eats that holds our team members accountable to certain metrics, holds our managers accountable for certain performances, and lets everyone know what our vision is, what our 1-year goal is, what our 3-year goal is, and what our 10-year plan is. Traction, for lack of a better term, keeps us on track. After reading the book Traction, I quickly called the company and hired a Traction implementer to help us implement this entrepreneurial operating system into our organization. It took our leadership team 1 year to get Traction fully implemented, and a great year it was. We'll go over a little more about Traction in just a minute. One of the things that Traction provided us was a look into our future. How we accomplished this was coming up with 1 year, 3-year, and 10-year plans. Our 10-year plan right now is 9 restaurants and $9 million in revenue. Our 3-year plan tasked us with opening 2 more restaurants. Once we implemented Traction, we were on the look for our 4th location. That's where Brickhouse 40 came in. Brickhouse 40 was an existing restaurant in Granby that we purchased in 2018. At this time, we have 4 operating restaurants, and we plan to do 5 more restaurants in the next 7 years as part of our 10-year plan. Next on our agenda is core values. Core values are the fundamental set of actions a team member must regularly exemplify to fit into the culture of our organization. These actions are non-negotiable. Hardworking is our first core value. I'm sure everyone at one time or another has worked with a person that wasn't very hardworking. Most likely, you had to make up for that person's lack of hard work, and you had to work even harder because that person wasn't a very good worker. You probably found that working with someone that didn't work very hard was not a lot of fun. Here at Down the Street Eats, we want to build a culture of hardworking individuals here. If you're not a hard worker, you're probably not going to fit into our culture. Positive attitude. Positive attitude is so important in the restaurant business. Whether you're greeting a guest, serving a table, or working in any of our kitchens, having a good attitude at work is super important, and it's non-negotiable. I'm sure all of you have worked with someone who's had a negative attitude, or even known someone who's had a negative attitude. People with negative attitudes are energy vampires. When you have to go to work with someone with a negative attitude, the day drags on what seems like forever. You find yourself in a much worse mood because of this person's complaining and belly aching. And likely you're probably not doing the best job you can because this energy vampire is dragging everyone down with them. Regardless of what you have going on in your life, and regardless of what's happening that day, when you come into work, you've got to leave that negative stuff at the door and have a positive attitude the entire day. Consistency. In my opinion, next to a great restaurant location, consistency is the most important thing in the restaurant business. This is what's allowed companies like McDonald's and Chipotle and Applebee's and any of those large corporations to thrive and create thousands and thousands of locations. Consistency in service, consistency in quality of food, and consistency in presentation. Without consistency, you'll leave your guests confused and not sure whether they want to come to your restaurant or not. Imagine if someone comes in one day and gets a turkey avocado melt at Rudy's and has an amazing experience. The avocados are laid out beautifully. All the portions are correct. It tastes delicious. The next day they come in, they say, oh my God, that was an amazing experience I had at that deli. I can't wait to go back tomorrow. Well, tomorrow comes along, they stop in, and they get half the amount of avocados they normally had, and the avocados were brown. The lettuce is a little bit yellow, and there's not as much honey mustard dressing on it as there was the day before. You'd probably be disappointed, and it might take a while before you came back to Rudy's again, if you decided to come back at all. When we're waiting on our guests, when we're creating amazing food in our kitchens, consistency needs to be one of your number one priorities. Growth. Growth is our last core value. By growth, we mean simply, we want you to come in every day and be a little better than you were the day before. An example of this is learning how to upsell appetizers, learning how to pair wine with entrees, learning how to upsell desserts at the deli, learning new recipes to cook, advancing into management positions, and becoming the best team member you can be on a daily basis. Next up, traction. Traction has 5 key components: the VTO, or the Vision Traction Organizer, the Scorecard, the Meeting Pulse, the Accountability Chart, and Rocks. First, we'll talk about the Vision Traction Organizer, or the VTO. The VTO is a guide that we've established when we implemented Traction that provides a vision for our organization. As you can see, the first thing on the VTO are our core values: hardworking, positive attitude, consistency, growth. Next up, core focus. Our passion is creating new opportunities for our team members. By opening new restaurants, we regularly create new opportunities. Core focus, or our niche, create unique scratch food with a local feel. I think everyone can agree that all of our restaurants have unique scratch food with a local feel. 10-year target, 9 locations, $9 million in gross sales. Marketing strategy, our target market, folks that have money to travel or are local or are in business near our locations. Geographic, they're convenient, close to home, or on the way to work. Psychographic, loves good food, loves great service, health conscious. 3 uniques: quality of food, menu item variety, atmosphere. Proven process, grassroots. Guarantee. Our guarantee to our guests is great food and great service, on-time delivery. The marketing strategy and the vision traction organizer is what guides our marketing efforts. Take a minute and review the 3-year picture. The traction portion of the VTO describes our 1-year plan, rocks or goals, and our issues list. Take a couple minutes and review the traction portion of the VTO. Our second traction tool is the scorecard. This slide shows Vertical Bistro and Tap. The scorecard is filled out by our managers on a weekly basis and helps us predict our profit and loss statement at the end of the month. These key metrics are over budget. The scorecard allows us to identify that metric and do something about the problem before it persists for too many weeks. The scorecard is an amazing tool for our business and allows our locations to stay on track with their financial aspirations. The items you see listed in the scorecard are the fundamentals of running a profitable restaurant. We'll start at the top with the categories in bold. Sales variance. We measure last year's sales compared to this year's sales. We want to see at least a 3% growth. Food comp percentage. We measure the amount of food that we give away on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Food comp percentage is 5.5% for vertical. Food and beverage cost of goods versus sales. Food and beverage is our biggest expense in the restaurant business. At vertical, we want to run a 25% food cost, as we said. Alcohol comp percentage, 5.5% for vertical. Again, we're measuring the amount of alcohol that is given away for one reason or another. Alcohol cost of goods, 18%. 18% is what it costs us to purchase alcohol compared to what we sell it for. Total labor, 18%. We measure labor every day and every week of the entire year. Labor is our second highest expense in the restaurant business. Prime cost is the total of our food and beverage cost of goods, food and beverage comps, alcohol cost of goods, and labor. By measuring prime cost, we have one number that summarizes all the key performance indicators in the restaurant business. And the last line is weekly review average. This is an average of all the reviews that we receive from Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, and Google. Having a great online reputation is imperative to the long-term success of our restaurants. The third component of traction is meeting pulse. The meeting pulse outlines the number of meetings that we have on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. For starters, we have a level 5 meeting that all supervisors attend with their general manager on a weekly basis. Level 10 meetings are for GMs and our integrator or director of operations. Those as well are weekly meetings that go 90 minutes and follow a very strict level 10 meeting agenda. On a monthly basis, our leadership team all meets together and solves a lot of the important issues facing our organization as a whole. Every quarter, the leadership team also gets together and does a full day traction session. During that traction session, we review last quarter's financials, last quarter's rocks or goals. We solve issues and make plans and goals for the next quarter. The last meeting we have is the annual meeting, which happens once a year and is a 2 to 3 day meeting for the leadership team. It allows us to spend a lot of time reviewing the past year, how our financials came in, how we solved our issues, and gives us time to plan the year ahead. The fourth component of traction is the accountability chart. The accountability chart spells out each seat in our organization and indicates the 5 high-level functions of that seat. Due to the size and the amount of information on the accountability chart, it is very hard to read in this slide. Please ask your manager if you'd like to see the accountability chart for your location. The fifth key component of traction are rocks. I mentioned rocks in the meeting pulse. Rocks are another word for goals. We give rocks to every person in a supervisory role in our organization. So your restaurant general manager, your front of house manager, your sous chef, your head chef, all of these folks will have rocks or goals that they are trying to achieve every quarter. The great thing about rocks in traction are that they regularly give our management team new heights to aspire to. Rocks could be improving sales numbers by 5%, dropping your food cost by 1%, attaining 50 five-star reviews in 1 quarter. Rocks help our organization continue to gain traction and to be a better organization today than we were the day before. Financial discussion. What you'll see here is a profit and loss statement for Rudy's Deli Winter Park, or our corporate name, Endless Winter Incorporated. This statement is from January 2019 and is the actual profit and loss statement that we saw that month. In the restaurant business, most of the things that we measure as a percentage. That's because dollar amounts are all relative to the amount of sales you're doing. So somebody could say, oh, hey, we had $10,000 in labor this month. Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, it depends on how many sales we did that month. If it was $10,000 on 50,000 in sales, that would give us a 20% labor cost. 20% is actually pretty good and is a little lower than what we actually go for typically. With that being said, look at the third column to your right and review all the percentages for the key metrics we have here. The key metrics we're measuring should look very familiar since we discussed these when we went over your scorecard. Discounts, 5.52%. Total cost of goods sold, 32%. Wages or labor, 26.79%. Net operating income, 3.87%. At first glance, this scorecard may look okay. Without knowing what our goals are for each of these key metrics, it's probably difficult for you to say. What I can tell you is that this month in particular, we had an assistant manager working for us that had been doing a lot of underhanded things. He had been discounting a lot of sales and giving away free food to his friends. He was stealing food out of the restaurant and taking it home with him. He also had a very hard time closing at night, so he would keep his staff on for hours and hours after they should have gone home so they could do his work for him, and ultimately drove the business somewhat into the ground that month. After we identified through the scorecard and ultimately the P&L that we were being taken advantage of by this person, we quickly let them go. The reason I'm showing you this is because I want you to understand that each and every one of you have a major effect on how profitable our restaurants are. Let's go to the next slide so we can see what our budget should have been that month and the amount of money we should have put on the bottom line. The profit and loss budget for January 2019 actually showed a 4.5% and not a 5.5% discount in sales. We had a 28% food and beverage cost of goods budget. We had a 17% wages budget, not a 26%. And our net operating income should have came in at 15.68% as opposed to the measly 3% we put up in our actuals. As you can see, if Rudy's Deli had been managed correctly that month, we could have put $5,500 on the bottom line. Instead, due to the mismanagement, we only put $1,344 on our bottom line. We should have been almost 5 times more profitable had we run efficiently. What you can all do in your restaurants to have a positive effect on your profit and loss statement is be careful not to discount too much. Don't throw away any food. If the food can be used, do not throw it in the garbage. Rotate your stock. First in, first out is our inventory method, which means when something arrives, you put it in the back and you put the older item to the front of the shelf to be used first. Clock in, clock out when you're scheduled. If your manager needs you to stay a little longer, no problem, but you shouldn't stay over your time unless asked to do so by a manager. If we all work together at focusing on these key performance metrics, our restaurants can be more and more successful every single month. Manage guest expectations. Managing your guests' expectations means keeping them in the loop on what's going on. After a long rush at the deli, you may want to tell the last few people you're ringing up that their sandwiches may take 10 to 15 minutes due to the amount of tickets we have on the ticket rail. If you've just fully sat the entire restaurant at vertical, you may need to tell your last table that the food could take 45 minutes to an hour and ask them if they are prepared to wait. By giving your guests that information ahead of seating them or ahead of taking their order, they can make the decision whether or not they want to stay in order. Hi, folks. Thanks for coming to Brickhouse 40 tonight. I have to let you know that we did just seat the entire restaurant. I do have a table for you right now, but your food may take 45 minutes to an hour to come out of the kitchen. Would you still like to get a table? By giving your guests this inside information, the guest now has the ability to make the decision on whether they want to stay or not and whether they want to wait. If you had just sat the guest and then sent the server over to them, they would have no idea that their food was going to take 45 minutes or an hour. Could you imagine what they would be thinking 30 minutes into their visit with us? This obviously is not an ideal situation for any guest. Be sure to keep your guest in the loop of what's going on in the restaurant at all times and always manage their expectations. We have one rule at Down the Street Eats. No one leaves unhappy ever. This one rule drives our culture. It drives the way we operate. It drives the way we react to our guests. And it ensures that no one ever leaves unhappy at one of our restaurants. If you feel that a guest may be having a bad experience, be sure to ask them if there's anything else you can do for them. Be sure to inquire with an open-ended question. Hey, was everything prepared to your liking? By doing this, hopefully you can tease out any issues that the guest may be having with us. If you're stumped and the guest just politely says, no, we're fine, thanks, be sure to alert your manager and ask the manager to go visit the table or to go speak with the guests. The manager may have more luck at finding out what the issue is. If we let that guest leave and they're unhappy, they'll likely get online and give us a poor review. It's a lot easier for us to turn around a bad experience with a guest in the restaurant than it is once they leave. So remember, the number one rule at Down the Street Eats is no one leaves unhappy, ever. When we do identify an unhappy guest, we have a tremendous opportunity to rewrite the last chapter of their visit with us. How we handle an upset guest is the difference between a mediocre restaurant and an amazing restaurant. By rewriting the last chapter, we have the ability to turn this guest experience around and show them what true hospitality is all about. Team members should look at this as a challenge and not something to be ignored. Oftentimes, if they know a table is upset with them or a guest is upset with them, they'll ignore it, they'll give the check, and just hope that the people go away. This will just lead to upset guests and terrible online reviews. Rewriting the last chapter should be a challenge you happily take on. Let's say, for instance, we have an 8-top at Brickhouse 40. 7 of the 8 plates for the 8-top are in the window, and we're just waiting on a steak. As the chef hurriedly throws the steak on the plate, it slips between his tongs and falls on the floor. This is one of those terrible situations that does happen in the restaurant, and typically it happens when we're crazy busy. What should you do? How do you rewrite the last chapter? Obviously, the food's going to go out to the table and someone is going to be missing their dinner. A simple way to help accommodate this guest is to be open and honest with him. Let him know that we had a little accident in the kitchen and we have to refire their steak. In the meantime, make sure you come to the table with a bowl of soup or a side salad or an appetizer so this guest has something to eat while all the rest of his party are eating their dinner entrees. Once the refired steak gets out to the guest, once again apologize and go talk to your manager. Explain the situation to your manager. Likely what your manager will do is comp the steak, comp the in-between food, the appetizer or the soup, and also likely buy dessert for the table or maybe a round of drinks. The philosophy here is not only are we comping the mistake that we made and the additional food that we gave them, but we're doing them one better by providing them with a free dessert or a free drink. At no time during the service do you want to mention how you're going to be handling the bill, maybe with the exception of offering them free dessert on the house. When you bring the check to the guests, let them know that you comp the steak and that you comp the other food as well. and that the free round of drinks were not on the bill either. By not disclosing the discounts to the guest during the service, the guests don't have an opportunity to tell you, oh no, that's not important, or you don't have to do that. We want to let them know that we take hospitality very seriously, and regardless of how the experience went, we are going to comp those meals out of principle. We clearly fell short of our guarantee to them: great food and great service, on-time delivery. Team member benefits at a glance. Team member meals. Rudy's Deli team members are eligible to a meal after working for at least 4 hours. Vertical and Brickhouse 40 employees will receive this benefit after 1 year of employment. Back-of-house staff get a free meal every day. Team members not on shift will be given a 50% discount to be applied to the team member and immediate family only. This does not apply to alcohol. Team members will adhere to all guidelines in the DTSC team member handbook regarding team member meals. Team member referral program. Any team member who refers a new team member for hire to the DTSC family of restaurants is eligible to receive a $250 bonus after that new team member has been employed for 90 days. Team member end of season or ski pass bonus. All team members are eligible for an end of season bonus or full reimbursement of your ski pass not to exceed $499, providing the attendance guidelines have been met for the entire season. See DTSE Team Member Handbook for guidelines. Team member birthday bonus. All team members are eligible for a $50 paycheck reimbursement for a birthday message post on our organizational messaging platform, 7 shifts. We want to hear how you spent the money. Tell us a good story. As soon as you post your birthday story, we will reimburse the $50 to you in your next paycheck. Team member clothing allowance. All team members are eligible for a clothing allowance up to $200 after 1 year of full-time employment. This will be in the form of a reimbursement. The employee must turn in receipts for the clothing items purchased. The items purchased must be work attire. No casual or personal wear will be reimbursed. We will then reimburse the employee up to $200. Paid time off. After 2 years of full-time employment, staff members begin to accrue 1 week of paid time off per year. Team member survey bonus. All team members are eligible for a $25 gift card to any of our restaurants, Rudy's Deli, Brickhouse 40, or Vertical Bistro, for receiving a mention on a public review of 4 stars or better. This includes Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, and Square. It's rewind time. Following this video, you will click the link below to take our orientation quiz. This is a 10-question quiz to test your orientation you attended today. You must receive an 80% or better to receive credit for participation. You will then be complete with our orientation portion of onboarding. We are excited to have you as new team members at Down the Street Eats. Thank you for your hard work and dedication.